Hi all, welcome to a video for day 4 of the Cheltenham Festival 2014, otherwise known as Gold Cup Day. Always a bittersweet affair. It's the last day of what's usually 4 amazing days racing, but a lot of chances to win money, starting with the Triumph Hurdle. The favourite of this market, rightfully so, is La Rochère for Nicky Williams. He's a multiple course and distance winner and been doing it very, very well. The one worry I do have about this horse is the ground, because it's been pretty bottomless what he's been winning on, or soft at least. He won on good in France, but there's two things. One, I think he's going to get pressured on the lead in this race in the bigger field, and two, I just wonder if that will blunt his turn of foot from the front on this faster ground. Some could argue he might be able to quicken off it better, who knows, but I think the competition for the lead could be his undoing here. Guitar Pete's got a great chance coming over from Ireland. He was a course and distance second on good ground over the course in a Group 2, so that form reads very, very well, and since then he's followed up in the last two. He's got a link on form to Tiger Roll, who's 14 to 1 and also in this race, but I just think in the last race, the way Guitar Pete travelled and then quickened compared to Tiger Roll, I do think Guitar Pete is the more logical choice in this one, to be fair. The one that interests me is Calypto for Paul Nicholls. He's improving. He beat older horses earlier this season, giving them £10, which is a cracking performance. He then beat the Adonis winner, Actival, who unfortunately is out of this race. He would have run a good race. The better ground should suit. And I think the way he hunts up and then comes through late, I think the likely pace in this race is really going to be to his advantage. A huge price horse here who I really fancy on an each-way play is Abyssal for Willie Mullins. He's improving all the time. He's 3 from 3 over hurdles, and I think his style of running could actually suit him here in the Triumph. He goes hell for leather, and watch every race on the same. He goes on, they come back to him, and then he goes on again. He's a 3-miler in the making, a 3-mile chaser in the making, looking at everything that's going for him. And the way he runs and everything, he stacks them up and then kicks again. I think he's got the stamina for this type of race, and I think he's got the speed and the class. He beat Adriano De Motte, we fancy, in a different race earlier this week, comfortably last time, and as I said, I do think this Abyssal is, especially next year over Pentasy, is going to be something special. The other thing about him, he flashes his tail when they come up to him and in the last part, and that suggests he's still got a lot left in the tank. He's a lazy sort, but I think if you can get the full effort out of him, I think he could run well, though I do think he'll have to play second fiddle here. I think he's going to force the pace and may just come short. My 1, 2, 3 here is Calypto to beat Abyssal and Guitar Pete. Very quickly over the county hurdle, because there's too many entered in multiple times. The horses to look at here are Cheltenham, course form obviously in the Champion Bumper. He's got big field form in the Betfair Hurdle. He's on a nice mark. He's unexposed. Once again, he's entered about 6 times, so I don't know what he's going to run. Del Arca won the Great Wood, so obviously merits respect. The problem with this one is the ground. Everything he's done is on soft. Will he go on this? Baltimore Rock won the Imperial yesterday, but it looks like he's not going to get in, because even by the stable's admission, he's got a lot to come out. Lac Fontana has got some good course form, some terrible course form. Which Lac Fontana is going to turn up on Friday, who knows? At a huge price, got to put a word in for Get Me Out of Here. He's got an amazing course record without winning, or been beat. I think he's been placed 6 times here. He goes well fresh. He's better off at the weights with Del Arca for an 8-length beating on ground that wouldn't have suited him. So I still can't believe he's like 25 to 1 now. Get Me Out of Here compared to 14 to 1 Del Arca. The better ground will suit him. He didn't stay in the World Hurdle last year, I think it was, but travelled really well to 2 out and just didn't get home. I can see him running a massive race. If I had to pick 3 for this, it would be Cheltenham from Get Me Out of Here and that from Baltimore Rock. Word though for Arctic Fire, he's looked one pace in group races recently, but Willie Mullins' record in this race is staggering, and for that reason alone, and we have seen it where all of a sudden, oh god, he's suddenly become amazing in a handicap, really thrown in, so keep an eye out for money for Arctic Fire. The Albert Bartlett's an interesting one, because King's Palace has been the favourite for the whole winter pretty much until the last 2 days, where Briar Hill for Willie Mullins has just taken over it. Briar Hill is going to be the flying ointment here, because he's entered everywhere, so where's he going to go? We don't know. We'll know more probably tomorrow. But even with Briar Hill, is he going to stay the 3 mile? He probably will based on point form, but that doesn't necessarily mean, oh, right, I'm now going to go and stay 3 mile over hurdles. And also, it's that we don't know what he's achieved, and Willie Mullins has even admitted, I don't know how good he is. Whereas King's Palace for David Pipe has got course form. He goes well fresh. This has been his target all season from race number 1. He goes hard from the front. He travels well. He jumps well. And David Pipe has even said this is his number one pick. If any horse is going to win this week for him, it'll be this one. And bear in mind, he's got the likes of Dynast, who's favourite for the the Ryanair, sorry, at the moment. That's a pretty big statement. Captain Cutter's of interest, being the Challow winner. The one thing I do think is, I don't know if he'll stay this trip, because he's a free-going sort up the hill. It's a bit of a risk. But if you're looking for someone at a huge price, have a look at Port Mellon for Paul Nicholls. He's only had one run when he came third over the course and on this going in a Group 2. Only beaten 5 lengths. The one thing I would say is he looked coming to the last like he was going to win. He quickened away over 2.5 miles. The step up and trip will suit him. They've been waiting for this ground. He's had no setback. He's got all the potential in the world. The question is he going to step up to this mark? It's worth a bit of a risk if you're looking for a big price. If I've got to go for 1, 2, 3 here, though, I would go from King's Palace to beat. You'd have to put Briar Hill in there purely because it's Mullins and it's the potential angle from Port Mellon. That would be my 1, 2, 3 if I was picking him. Next up is the big race of the whole week, which is the Cheltenham Gold Cup. I don't think it's as good as other Gold Cups we've had. If you look at some of the other years, we've had the battles between Corto Star and Denman, and then Long Run coming back. I don't think we're going to get anything like this sort of calibre coming out of here. We've got to start with the champ, Bobsworth. Won last year. He's won one of those unique horses who's won over hurdles, then the RSA, then the Gold Cup 3 years in a run. So he clearly loves Cheltenham. The fact that he's had a break since his last win at Christmas is no big thing, because he did it last year. Went straight from the Hennessy win to the Gold Cup and won. Everything seems fine with it. He run terrible first time out, which that was a bit of a shock. Bear in mind he won first time out in the Hennessy, but then bounced back. Really, really good style in the, I think it was the Lexus that he won over Christmas, wasn't it? And no, all seems fine. 5 to 4, 6 to 4 is a pretty short price, though, I must be honest. The one worry I do have is, while he's won on good ground, he is an out-and-out stayer, Bobsworth, and I just wonder if something with a bit of a turn of foot might lay it up to him. But let's see who else could. Look, Silvio Conti's next in at 11 to 4. I have worries about this. He fell in this last year. Don't get me wrong, I've watched it again twice this morning. He was travelling equally as well as Bobsworth last year, but took a really heavy fall. Now, the one worry I do have is the good ground. He was beaten fair and square by First Lieutenant at Aintree. The month after there, on good ground, First Lieutenant travelled all over him, quickened away from him in the start of a good horse. He also did that the previous season as well. So the one thing with Silvio Conti, he won the King George, but he's all stamina, and he's another like Bobsworth. I just wonder if something with a turn of foot could upset the apple cart here. Because for me, Silvio Conti is 11 to 4. First Lieutenant, if he runs here, my gut feeling is he is going to run in this. At 12 to 1 could be an interesting angle. Last Instalment also runs for Jigginstown, the same as First Lieutenant. He was brilliant. Don't get me wrong, that win in the Hennessy was absolutely breathtaking. Getting him on the track's been, a job of work, because he's very, very injury prone. On his day, he would take all the beating here. The problem which we've had here is, I don't know, obviously the drug allegation within the Fenton yard, I don't know, it's a horse been tested, it's fine. Has it delayed work? I don't know if what's been going on behind the scenes there, which I suppose, I don't think it's too much of a worry. But, on his day, Last Instalment will take some beating. First Instalment has always been within 3 lengths of Bobsworth throughout his whole career. Virtually every time they've gone up, he's got so close to Bobsworth. And I just think, on this better ground, if he goes for this, which the other day I was thinking he was going to go for the Ryanair chase, but the fact that the good ground's coming, I think Mr. O'Leary is going to really, I think the appeal of the Gold Cup might just put him to put First Lieutenant in this. They're saying that he's double-handed with Last Instalment. I don't know. Captain Chris has been brilliant. He's on his highest mark, and rightfully so. He's been placed in a couple of King Georges. He's been breathtaking again all season, this one. Everyone says he's got to go right-handed because he had one episode at Cheltenham where he kept jumping right-handed and got pulled up in the end. But people forget he won the Arkle on good ground, going left-handed, running away from them. So Captain Chris, this isn't a vintage renewal, and Captain Chris deserves his place there. The risk is, will he go right-handed again, going left-handed? We don't know, but he deserves his place there. Giant Bolster, you've got to mention, came back to form recently, course and distance form, but he's getting older. I don't think he's as good as he was. Though we could run a big race. Triolo Deline, 14 to 1, is trying to emulate Bobsworth winning the Hennessy and then the Gold Cup. The thing is, though, is he just a good handicapper? That's what it comes down to. Bobsworth, has always had that classy element to it. Triolo Deline has been a very good handicapper. So for that reason alone, I'd be happy to avoid him in this. And while an interesting one, on his own has been supplemented for Willie Mullins here. He was favoured for the Grand National, and he's a good horse in his own right, but you kind of get the impression, is the yard just wanting the runner in the race, so therefore let's supplement him and put him in. My gut feeling is saying that he is. Now, I've got to pick 3 in this, but I'm going to pick 4 because I don't think they're both going to run. For the first place, I'm going for either Last Instalment / First Lieutenant. I don't think they're both going to run in this race. I think one or the other is going to run, and whichever one runs, I've got a feeling that they'll take a lot of beating because they're both really good horses. And I'll go from Bobsworth, who's got everything going in his favour, but I'd just rather have the others at price, from Captain Chris, who I think will run a really big race here. The race after the Gold Cup is the Fox Hunter Chase, which is a bit of a lottery, don't get me wrong, with usually amateur riders in there. The whole monopoly is being held here. Well, it's at the front of the market, it seems, by On the Fringe. Though the one worry I do have is he was beaten 24 lengths in this race 2 years ago on good ground. Okay, he's been in better form then, but that is always a bit of a worry in my head. Now, this summer, he's traded wins with Tammy Hill. And Tammy's Hill has actually got better form on good ground, so I'm struggling to see why On the Fringe is 4-1, while Tammy's Hill is 7-1. They'll both run decent races, I think, but I'd rather be having Tammy's Hill than On the Fringe. One horse I would rather have over the pair of them, though, is the third favourite, currently at 8-1, Harbour Court. He's had 2 easy Hunter Chase winners in the last year, including one over course and distance on good ground. He was unseated on his one start since in February, but I've watched the unseat. It wasn't his fault at all. What he basically did was there was a scrimmaging at the first. He got hampered, and the horse had nowhere to go, and to be honest, tried to jink, and that was his chance gone. But he goes well fresh, this horse, so I don't think the lack of a run is necessarily a risk. I think the better ground will suit him. He's done well over the course, and in a very open race, let's face facts, where jockey error, quite often happens in this. Some go too fast, some leave it too late. I'm happy to go with Harbour Court in this. Got to mention Oscar Delta, who possibly would have beaten Salsify, I'm virtually certain, last year if he didn't jink and then go through the railings. Problem is, since then, he's been woefully out of form, nowhere near the standard to win this. So you're relying on a bounce back to form, which I'm not willing to do on this one. Interesting horse at 14-1 is Bertie's Dream. He came 5th in the Pertemps final last year, and he's not run since. Now, before then, he had poor chase form, but the fact is they've left him off a year and they've brought him back in this. The chases he ran in were a lot better than this type of Fox Hunter Chase. Now, it's interesting if he runs after a year to put him straight back into the Fox Hunter Chase. I don't think they're going to do that, and I think they would have schooled him extensively, so he rates a very live outsider, I would say, Bertie's Dream. Another outsider as well is Calypso de Creek. He's a bit of a reformed character. He had all the hype in the world a few years ago and completely lost his way. He then went back pointing and everything seemed to come back together. And now, since he's come back to Hunter Chases, he's been absolutely fantastic. He jumps well, but this is a huge step up in class. If it was back in the day, you'd say, yeah, do you know what? He'll run all over these. I just don't know if he's going to do it again. But I'm going to pick the 1, 2, 3 here. So I'm going to go for Harbour Court to beat Tammy's Hill, with Bertie's Dream running a big race at a big price. Next up is the Martin Pipe Conditional Hurdle, which is the nightmare race of the card. I remember last year I did Garvey Chambertin, who, to be fair, got a terrible ride there was a young conditional, but you've got to expect it really to run no sort of race. He didn't know what he was doing, really, to be fair. But the interesting one here is McManus. JP McManus is triple-handed here, and we'll go over those 3 because these will take a lot of beating, these ones. And that is, first of all, Regal Encore. He's got great course form being placed in the bumper last year, and he actually came 4th yesterday in the Imperial Cup. The step up and trip will be good because he looked like a winner 2 out and then he quickened away from him yesterday. So I think the slight step up and trip with the hill here will be more in Regal Encore's favour, and he must have a chance if he's going to be turned out quick. I can't say he'll do well because he's never been turned out quick in the past, but surely he's got to have a decent chance. Alavan is an interesting one. He was 6th in the Betfair Hurdle and closed late. He got outpaced and then closed late. The course will suit him more. The better ground should be fine. He's been kept fresh since then. He hasn't run, and he must have a massive chance. While the horse I like, and the one I'm probably I'm going to go with on the day is Never Enough Time. He's improved every race this season, and more importantly, the last 2 wins he's had were for a conditional jockey who's actually tentatively got his name next to him for tomorrow for that race on Friday. So the fact is, there's a relationship there, and I think that goes a long way with these horses. Okay, you might ride them and work, but when you get in the competitive race, that's where it comes. And I think everything's primed for a good run from Never Enough Time. The Sky Farm is an interesting one. I think he needs this ground. Well, if he's got this better ground, I think he needs more of a staying trip because he goes pretty much from the front, and he jumps well and stays. He's got course form. If he doesn't go in the county, which I hope he doesn't, because I think he needs to step up and trip, he must be able to run a big race here. Also, an interesting one is If and But Why Not. He's been massively out of form on heavy recently, but his good ground form is really, really good. He was beaten less than 10 lengths in the Greatwood. And he was beaten about the same in the County Hurdle last year. This race isn't as good as the County Hurdle. You're relying on a bounce back to form, but sometimes the going will. But 25 to 1, there's worse shots. But I'm going to go for a 1, 2, 3 here. And I'm going to go for Never Enough Time to beat Alevan. And I'm actually going to put in the Sky Farmer because I don't think they're going to turn Regal Encore out. I think if he was going for the bonus, they would have, but I don't think he's going to do it. And McManus has already got enough in this race. Now, the final race of the whole week is, as always, the Johnny Henderson Grand Annual Chase, a really competitive 2-mile handicap chase, won last year by Alderwood, and that was for JP McManus, who always seems to have gambles in this race. Even but Kid Cassidy went straight a few years ago, but you know, you've got the likes of Alderwood who's gone in, and he's double-handed here, both of which I think have got interesting chances. First of all, Ned Buntline's coming over from Ireland. He's been solid, if not spectacular, over fences. He's been very careful. He hasn't made too many mistakes, and he's travelled well, just not found a lot. The problem is he often finds just one pace. They're not quickening away. They quicken away, but then they don't get any further away, and that's always of interest to me because of this stiff finish at Cheltenham up the hill. He's got in off a different weight, off a very low weight, and if this different type of course comes into reckoning and it shows something, he could be very well handicapped, because also sometimes we know the handicapper struggles to identify the Irish form across to England. JP McManus's other horse is Mr. Mole, who is often a really good traveller, but doesn't find a lot at the end of the race. He's done that over fences, he's done that over hurdles, that's just the character he is. The one thing is, though, quite often he only runs in small races. Now, he seems to come best, like when he won first time out. He actually beat Bukova earlier in this season easily, who I fancy for a race earlier this week, actually, to run a big race. So I think if we get a bigger field, he might be able to travel into the race better and finish off his race better. He needs to cut out his errors, but those errors he makes, rather than mistakes, they're just more slow jumps, I think, and that's because of the slow pace. He could be thrown in, but there's risks attached to Mr. Mole, 12 to 1. A horse I like the look of here is Next Sensation from Michael Scudamore, currently around 10 to 1. His jumping has improved no end since returning to fences. He's won 3 from 4, unseating unluckily the other time. He gets a nice novice weight allowance here, and he's been waiting for this ground. He's got no course form, which is a bit of a worry, I won't lie. It's always a bit of a worry when no one's really got the course form, but then again, who does really around here? But this horse should run well. One horse that does have course form, over hurdles at least, is Ted Veal, the winner of the County Hurdle last year. He's not looked a natural over fences in better company than this. He looked a bit sticky, a bit guessy, a bit chancy. You won't get away with that round here. But, it's been in better company than what he'll face here. He's 7 to 1. I wouldn't be over the top on Ted Veal at 7 to 1, even though he's shown that he's got a course and distance like in here. I just think, I don't know, I think there's just better bets in a more open race here. One horse who I think is a huge price at 20 to 1 is Claret Cloak. He was a very, very good hurdler, underrated really. A fantastic debut over fences. I watched it again. Okay, it was only a small race, but he didn't make a mistake at any fences. He was then beaten literally on the line by Many Rivers to Cross over a slightly extended trip, and I fancy Many Rivers to Cross to run a big race in the RSA earlier this week. They then tried front running in the Henry VIII in ground that wouldn't have suited, and he got tired, but he was there till between the last two. He goes well fresh. He wins first time out more often than not. The ground has come right for him. He's right down in the weights. 20 to 1. I think that's a massive price, Claret Cloak. You've got to mention Eric, who's in there because he's full favourite, but the problem is he's not got great fence form. He won last time out, but it wasn't a good race, and before then he looked a bit guessy. I think he's only that price, and no disrespect to the horse, because Nicky Henderson trains it and it's his dad's race. I don't think he should be anywhere near 14 to We've seen this before with the likes of Tanks for That and other ones who have been really fancied and it's not really come off, and I think this could be something similar. But I'm going to pick a 1-2-3 here, and my 1-2-3 I'm going for is Claret Cloak to beat Next Sensation, and I think Mr. Mole may run into 4th place. So that is the week summarised. I hope you've enjoyed the 4 videos. Someone did drop me an email and say, like I did last year, pick 4 horses for an each way Yankee. To which, as I always say on this, you know, it's like, how on earth could you pick 4 horses with confidence for an each way Yankee? But I've done it for you. And watch them all get beaten now, but we'll soon see. If I was picking 4 for my each way Yankee now, it would be Irving in the Supreme Novices. I would then put in, this is a tricky one where I would go next. I would then go with Smad Place for a bit of value in the RSA. I would then go for Big Bucks in the World Hurdle. And then from there, I would also go with King's Palace in the Albert Bartlett. So if you actually look at those prices currently, it's like a 3-1, 7-1, 3-1, 3-1. So they're not massive prices there, but they're the ones who I think you can be confident they should be able to run the races. But as always, I want to know what you guys are doing. So yeah, always on the comments, let me know what your thoughts are, what you're doing, and yeah, good luck for the festival, and I'll see you again. Cheers.